on go live. I mean, I know we're a couple minutes early, but I can also just shut up until it's time. So Krista, so it says someone is waiting. Krista, don't I assume I just hit admit to anybody who's waiting?
Yeah.
I'll also be letting kids in as well.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Because they're going to start trickling in.
Marshall.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello. So we got like 1 more minute before we get started, right?
Yeah, we have like 2. Yeah, 1, 2.
Because it looks like we don't have so many people here yet, so to be.
Yeah. We still have 2 more minutes to go, probably.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see if Caleb's ready?
Okay, Russ is in the waiting room. That means I have to start behaving myself.
Oh, Connor. Welcome.
Hey, Sam.
Hi, Russ.
Good to see your face.
Thanks, you too. Well, I don't see your face.
I think this format will be more interactive.
Okay, yeah, that's the hope. It looks like this is a very easy spot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, way cool,
looks like
better
we don't have
because
so many people here yet. Should we get started right away or wait a minute or two?
Yeah, let's start. And I think that we could probably mute everybody and then you could unmute them if they have answers, but it should be much more interactive. I think if everybody
you can also just type your answers into the chat very quickly. You won't have to wait 30 seconds before you hear me talk.
No, there's no delay on this thing.
Right, so perfect. Okay, so let's get started then. So the first game here is going to be Caitlin against Nathan. So this one started off with a Verisov, and here after bishop f4, I think black chose a variation that is a little bit dangerous. The move I would recommend for black here is e6, with the plan to play bishop b4 next and stop this knight from coming to b5, and I think that black is already slightly better. But instead, black played c5, and after e3, I think black must have underestimated this threat of d takes c5 because of knight b5, excuse me, because after knight c6 and knight b5, already it looks like black is in quite some trouble because I don't see how we're going to prevent a disaster on c7. If I recall, I think the best move is to take and play a6, and this is probably still okay for black, but he could have done better. So after this, though, now I think this position is very bad for black, but white should still be careful. And here I don't like the move white played with e takes f6. Let's see if anybody can come up with a better move. You can type your answers into the chat and I'll try to interact with them to the extent that I can. Anybody see a better move than e takes f6? So Vrishrank says knight d6 check. That's not a bad move at all, but I think there's an even better one. At this point, are we looking to do something complicated or simple? Do we do something? Okay, so Josh Price says, does knight c7 check work? That's also not bad. But basically here, I think what's going on is white has now an extra central pawn, which is a big advantage. And when you have a clear static advantage, like an extra pawn, particularly an extra pawn in the center, you don't want to make a mess of the position. You want to keep it simple and boring and straightforward. So I actually like simply retreating this knight, stopping all the threats to it. And now this knight is hit again. The threat is renewed. Once this knight moves, the d5 pawn will fall as well. White will be 2 clean pawns up and retains a pretty safe position. So for example, Josh Price's move knight c7 check, chop, and say queen a5 check. It feels like you might be losing control of the position a little bit, and I'm not sure I love this. Same with knight d6 check after take, take. This also looks very good for white, but I could imagine black quickly going d4 and trying to abuse the e-file. And well, I think it's easier to keep things as simple as possible because we already have the pawn up. But this keep it simple idea, it's important to know that you only want to take active steps like that to simplify the game when you have an advantage already. And because white already has the extra pawn, I think that's a good choice. Instead, after e takes f6, a takes b5, here after chop and chop, now black has a pawn down, but has a pretty nice lead in development as well as a big center. And this threat to the pawn on b2 is very dangerous. So already here, I'm not sure about white's position. I would like to play bishop b5 instead, but this is a mistake. What should black do in response here to bishop b5? Yes, Evan, that is correct. Queen a5 and the bishop will be lost, and this is bad news. So fg7 is played instead, and now white has some problems to solve. So he played c3, or I guess this is she played c3. Logan Brain has entered the waiting room. Should we admit him? All right, fine. Logan has been admitted to the chat room, even against my better judgment. But yeah, so c3 is played, and now black played bishop e6, which I think is a mistake. Because here, remember what I was saying is that when you have a good position, like a material advantage, you want to look for simple, straightforward moves to try to keep the game simple and straightforward, because eventually your extra material will win. But when your opponent has the extra material, then by converse, you don't want to play simple moves. You want to play very aggressive moves and try to make the game complicated. Can anybody see a move instead of bishop e6 that might have given black better chances to fight for the initiative? So Josh Price has an interesting move with d4. I like it, but I think there's an even stronger one. So Vrishant Castle, these are, let's see if we can do something more aggressive. Which piece when white played c3, he just shut down the bishop on g7. Is there some way we can wake the bishop up? So Evan Cole says b4, and I believe this is the best move. After b4, I don't see a great way to keep this pawn under control, which could blast open the long diagonal. For example, if c takes b4, bishop takes b2 looks extremely powerful, and I don't see how we're going to keep white's position under control. So white probably should play something to prevent this disaster from happening, but I think let's say white were to play knight e2, which looks like the most natural move, developing a new piece and stopping the threat. Now, this bishop is not a very happy camper, and after black castles, it's going to be hard for white to complete her development here, and I think that black has very good compensation for the pawn. To the people drawing on my screen, please don't. Thank you. Yeah, instead though, black played bishop e6. And I think this is a mistake because of bishop takes b5. And I don't actually care very much that we lost a pawn. What I care is that it's not like we lost the f pawn or the h pawn that doesn't do anything. We lost specifically the pawn that I wanted to use to batter down this position, open up the bishop on g7, who's otherwise now a very passive piece. So here I think that that allowing bishop takes b5 was a mistake. So there followed queen b6, a4, castles, and now white played knight e2. And I don't love this move because, white played knight f3. I don't love this move because I don't know where the knight's going. I believe the knight would be much better on e2, mainly because it lends support to the c3 pawn, which is something that I think could become relevant. For example, if black were to try to smash through with d4, I mean, at this point, black is 2 pawns down, so he must try to be very aggressive in order to justify the material loss. But if you were to play something like d4 and now white castles, for instance, this knight is helping defend the c3 pawn, which I think is a very valuable thing to do, while the knight on f3 would not have accomplished the same goal. So instead, knight f3 was played, and after knight a7, black gets a pawn back, but we'll have to lose some time. And so here, this is exactly the kind of position where I want my knight on e2, because the knight here would help this pawn be secure on c3, which means I wouldn't have to worry so much about playing a move like b3. Here, if we were to play b3, like all the pawns start falling. So queen c2 was played. I still think white's better here. f6 is not a good sign for black. I guess black played this move because they were worried about knight g5 coming. But I believe that if black was worried about that, they should have played h6, because this f6 move makes this bishop on g7 very ineffective. So there followed h3, queen d7, rook fd1, queen b5. So black's play here isn't super impressive, moving the queen back and forth, but apparently white didn't find a way to cause any trouble. So at this point here, let's see if anybody can come up with a good plan for white to put black's position under more pressure. Okay, so Evan has no, that's still okay. Yeah, can anybody suggest a plan that's that black for white to play here? He has an extra pawn, but it's not so easy to convert.
Look who's on the GNT thing.
Oh, great.
Sam Shankland.
So Logan Brain says head to f5. I think that's a mistake because after queen f5, we will lose the queen. Is that what Coach Logan meant, or did he mean something else? Heads to f5. Yeah, Coach Logan says he should have been more specific. So what does Coach Logan want? All right, so Josh Price is suggesting knight h4, which is, I believe, the move that Coach Logan had in mind as well, with the idea of abusing the f5 square. And I think this is the right idea, but the wrong time for it. The problem is I don't know. This I was going to say this makes some sense. No, not the right time because of f5, but f5 would be a mistake. What should white play now?
I don't know if I should talk or.
So students, what should white play here to put black out of his misery? White has a good tactic. Yes, Josh Price, rook takes a8. It might look silly to give up an open file, but that rook on f8 was actually performing a very important duty. What is that rook? Now that the rook is left, what can white play? Yeah, chop on f5, and that should be the end of the game. So, and here white is winning. So perhaps knight h4 here is a decent move. I guess black would have to, but I guess black would have to play rook a1 and then f5, but as soon as black gives up this open file, I think we're pretty happy. The move that I was actually thinking looked most natural was g4. And the point is that I want to play knight to h4 and knight f5 next, and I don't think that black's pieces are anywhere near in the right place to try to harass my king. And by playing g4, I have stopped black from playing f5 later, and in addition, if black were to play f5 now, then knight g5 is going to cause a lot of damage. And this looks very good for white to me. So my instinct would be g4. I do note that we should be a little bit careful of the move d4 here, which could potentially threaten bishop b3, which may explain partially why white chose the next move of knight d2. But I think that this knight is going in the wrong direction. So rook e8, and at this point, white played knight b3, which I think is a serious mistake because then d4 comes. But I'm thinking here about what white should do, and I see some interesting options, but I see one move that I really like. Let's see if anybody can suggest a good move for white here. Because after knight b3, black's position suddenly got good.
His little sausage finger up his nose.
Who's got a finger up their nose?
Sam Shankland just called him out. He said, did somebody just put their finger up their nose?
Well, at least they put their finger up their own nose.
12. This chubby kid.
All right, so what should white play here? Does anybody have a plan?
No.
Logan says blast it open. Can Logan be more specific?
Yeah.
Okay, so Josh Price has suggested b4. If you were going to play b4, I think that you should have done it on the previous move here, because now your knight is in really good place to abuse the d4 square, but I don't think this helps very much after b6. So Logan has suggested c4, which is a very interesting attempt, because after this, I imagine your point was knight e4, trying to eyeball a bunch of weakened squares. I think this is the right idea, but the wrong execution, because again, we have an advantage here just due to the extra material, and I don't think we should be looking for anything so rash when long-term things are going right. So the move that I would think is best for white is b3, with the plan to play c4 next and play Coach Logan's idea, but without losing a pawn first. And I don't think that black is going to be able to do anything about it. If c4 comes next, and then white, let's say I don't even know what black would play here. If white gets to go c4 and then take with the knight on c4, black's position will become very bad very fast. And I think this is the right way. Realistically here, this pawn on d5 is the guy that's keeping black's position together. And if we can exchange it off, then we should be doing very well. And Coach Logan says he's got to go teach, so let's wish him well and see him next week. But yeah, I would have suggested b3 here. Instead, after knight b3 and d4, now black has very real counterplay. And following knight d2 and d3, queen c1, the game was agreed drawn here, which is something I can't be very happy about. I don't think you guys should be agreeing to draws in positions where there's still a lot of fighting chances for both sides. It will stunt your development, and you should always be willing to fight and keep on fighting. I mean, it'd be one thing if you're like, oh, my position sucks, I shouldn't keep playing because my opponent offered me a draw, so I shouldn't play anymore because my position's bad. But here, this position looks very playable for both sides. If I had to guess, I'm going to put the computer on this. My guess is the computer will call this equal. Let's see what the computer says. It'll be close to equal is my guess. Now, computer says white's clearly better. I don't know. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I think this game could have continued. In any case, this was an interesting game. Let's move on to the next one. So I'm going to stop my share. You're going to have to look at my ugly face in its entirety for the few seconds while I prepare the next game. So this is another one that Coach Logan sent me. Share screen. Okay, so this is a game between Evan and Jude. So we've got the Karo Khan. Now, knight f6 probably isn't the best variation for black. I've always liked the move bishop f5 here, and I think that that's probably the best way. But, okay, we shouldn't talk too much about the opening. So after knight f6, choppy, choppy, bishop c4. I think white's best setup is actually bishop d3, c3, knight e2, queen c2, bishop e3, and castle along. Bishop c4 strikes me as wrong. And we get something like this. Here, I think that black should play bishop e6 and challenge white's bishop, because if white ever takes it, he will straighten out black's pawn structure, which he's probably very happy to see. Instead, after h3, knight d7 is played. But so far, this game looks very normal. It's very solid position. Both sides are just sort of developing their pieces, and nothing too crazy is happening just yet. Chop, chop here, queen d7. And now, at this point, I think white is starting to lose the thread, because it looks like they underestimated the danger to the king side. And here I'd like to see if anybody, white now played a4, which I think is a bad move. I'd like to see if anybody can come up with a better move for white to make here. If your microphone is off, you have to type in the chat, or I won't be able, because I can't hear you. So let's see what we've got. What should white play here?
I should play up the strength of your strength.
We should be thinking about what's going on. We have a better pawn structure in the long run. The more pieces get traded, the happier off we're going to be. But at the same time, our king could be a little bit unsafe. So trading pieces in general is going to be a very good idea, both because it will help neutralize black's attacking chances, and because it will get us closer to an endgame where black's doubled pawns could become a problem. So what should white play now? Josh Price, will knight h4 work? It looks like it's asking for serious trouble, but it might not be that bad. My concern after knight h4 is, of course, this move. And this looks very violent. After choppy, choppy, and I think you have to play knight f3, because if you play knight g2, this is not going to end well. You will, at the very least, lose your knight. And after knight f3, this looks very dangerous, but you are just in time to save yourself. If knight g6, instead of resigning, what should white play here? Josh Price, that would lose your knight. Let's see if anyone else can find a better move. Knight h4 is on the way, and it looks like the end of the world as we know it, but in fact, white has a saving resource, bringing one of his pieces back to the defense. Yeah, so Josh Price has got it, and Chris Tadona. Bring this bishop back to f1, boot that queen out of there, get the bishop to g2, and secure the king. So this won't work for black. But after knight f3, black can perhaps play queen g4 check when, honestly, this doesn't look that bad for white. King f1 check, and I think you can probably decline the draw and just start taking a walk with the king. It's good for his health. Check, and now if king d3, queen f5 is mate, we can't do that. But bishop e3, and I don't know though, but black still, this still doesn't look clear at all to me. For example, this king is ready to run to like d2 and c2 and get to the safe zone, but after f5, like the threat of f4 is very real and not so easy to stop. But things could get very goofy. For example, after king d2, f4, white has a very good move here. What should white play? In fact, it probably worked last move as well, but what should white do here? Okay, Josh, have a good day. Okay, to Evan and Vishank, I think you have the right idea, but the wrong move order. So yes to Nathan, and yeah, so some people were suggesting knight g5, which is probably pretty good, but there is f takes e3 check. And the problem is your king doesn't have anywhere great to go that keeps the knight alive. For example, after king c2, queen f5 check, you lose your knight. But if you, this is a good rule of thumb, is that if you ever have a tactical resource that you're trying to make work and it's not working, like here you want to play knight g5, but f e3 is a problem, one of the best things you can do is switch the move order. So here white could get away with bishop takes f7 check first, and now white wins because of king f7. By switching the move order here, we're taking black's queen. Or if king h8 after bishop e8, this is too much material. And after something like this, white's king is quite safe on d2, and he has a rook up. So this probably was okay for white. So knight h4, while I'm skeptical of it at first, I think it probably is okay. But the move that I had in mind was queen f1. And my point with this was threefold. One, I am defending against any sacrifices on h3 by bolstering this way. Two, I'm getting my queen out of the way of my rook, which was my only piece that hadn't developed yet, and now the rook can come to e1. And three, this bishop on c4, which looks nice but doesn't do that much, can potentially come to d3 and challenge the bishop on f5. And I think that this move sort of does it all, and that white is probably doing reasonably well here. In any case, white played a4, which strikes me as a bit aimless. I guess they were maybe worried about b5, but black's attack became very powerful, and here after queen b3, bishop takes h3. All of white's pieces are offsides, and black should be winning, because after gh3 and queen h3, this is definitely going to be checkmate. For example, if you defend this knight with queen d1 or something, I don't even know how, there is knight h4, and queen g2 mate is a threat, knight f3 is a threat. Let's suppose white were to take on h4. What would black do here? So you guys find the mate in 4. Can anybody find checkmate in 4 moves here? Don't just give me one move, give me the full variation.
Bishop h3, king h1, bishop g3, king g1, queen h2, king f1, queen takes h2, f2
There we
checkmate.
go. Well said. Bishop h2 check. This forces the king back to h1. Now we have a discovered check, and we have the exact same position that we saw a second ago, except black got the move bishop g3 for free, which means that after queen h2, king f1, instead of white's king escaping after queen f2, it is all done. So I don't think white can get away with taking this one, and instead made the understandable decision to capture on f7. But I think that now black, I don't know, maybe black could have not taken this bishop, because after black takes this bishop, I mean, this endgame that we got here is with gh3 is probably pretty good for black, but it's not that amazing. And I'm wondering if we could have been more violent and here played for some direct checkmate. And I don't see a great defense for white. This looks basically lost. I think that this is just going to be made very, very soon. I was thinking about bishop g6 with the point that after hg6 and takes that now, because black no longer has knight h4, that maybe this position could be defensible, but I think that black has a very nasty winning move here. In fact, I see 2 moves that I believe win. Let's see if anybody can find one of them. All right, so someone has the Golden Gate Bridge behind them from my hometown. Anybody have a winning move for black here? I believe I see 2, but I'm not 100% sure. So see if anybody can find a winning move here. Okay, so Evan has come up with rook e8 with the idea of rook e4. That I think is one of, and Nathan g5. So these, I believe, are the two winning moves. Essentially here what's going on is white's king is really frozen. Obviously it has nowhere to go. But the problem is black just doesn't have enough pieces to give mate in the attack right now. The queen and the bishop are not going to mate alone because the knight on f3 is just sort of holding things together. So what we need to do is somehow bring another piece into the attack. And there's two ways we can do that. One is to play g5 with the plan of playing g4 next and kicking this knight away. And the other is to play rook e8 and rook e4. And the thing is, a good way of thinking about this also is, what is white's next move? It'd be one thing if, for example, imagine this bishop here were to change colors and it moved up there. Then white's next move would be simple. He'd bring the bishop back to f1, expel your queen from her active post, bring the bishop to g2 and save the king. But here, I don't actually see what white's next move is. It's very hard to see how he's going to do anything. The bishop on d2 in theory could move, but where? There's nothing useful to do. The rook on a1 can't get into the game. White's queen can only move to e2 because the knight is hanging. The knight can't move because bishop h2 is in the air. So black doesn't have to threaten anything immediately, and I believe that something like rook e8 should win very routinely. I don't see a way out for white here. I mean, the best I see at the moment is knight e5, with the point that after f takes e5 for one very brief moment, there's no longer a threat on h2, and I can get away with queen f1. But now, for example, after something like, say, queen g4 check, queen g2, it might look like white's escaping, but like now's a good time to transpose to an endgame where black has a clean extra pawn and we'll have an active rook on the second rank. And the other endgame that we got was very good for black, but I think this one is completely crushing. Just to be sure, I want to make sure, because this is a tough position even for me, I want to make sure and cheat with the computer and see if I was right that that it was winning after rook e8 or g5. Maybe there's even a third winning move, but let's see. What does Stockfish have to say? Yep, rook e8 wins. g5, it says, does not win, actually. g5, apparently, bishop takes g5, fg, and knight e5 is white's still alive, I suppose. But yeah, rook e8 was the move. And indeed, it seems like we were right about that. So rar, we're almost as good as Stockfish. So let's turn off the computer. So instead, though, black went for queen takes f7. After king h8, bishop g6, yeah, we saw this. So following queen f7, and then takes. And here, this endgame, I think, is a bit better for black because of the better structure, but material is still equal, and it's not that easy to see how we break through. But after bishop f4 here, I believe white made a mistake with bishop takes f4. Because as soon as black can land the knight on this f4 square unopposed, white's going to have a bad day. So I think what white should have done was play bishop e3 and basically use this bishop as a glorified pawn. Of course, he never minds capture on e3 because this will bring his biggest pawn structure more compact. And here I think white would be okay. Instead, after knight takes bishop takes f4 and knight takes f4, this is a very good knight for black that I think will soon become white's undoing. So after king h2, for example, in this position here, now after rook e1, knight d3, white is losing a pawn because this knight got into the position. So that's why I think that bishop e3 would have been preferable, because I don't see how black can get the knight to f4 so easily, and I think that white is fine. For example, after rook e8, rook e1, I don't know, maybe black is a little better here, but it's not much, and I think white has a pretty playable position. But this would have been quite bad for white if that's very bad for white after this. So here now white is losing a pawn, and this is a very important pawn to lose. And now at the end of all this, there goes a second pawn. So I think I'm going to call it quits on this game and just assume that black won easily, because that's probably what should have happened. Yeah, okay, we're done here. Okay, this was an interesting game between Evan and Jude, where there were some interesting moments where people could have played better, but still a very good game. So I'm going to go over and look at the next one. I've just made a huge blunder for what it's worth. I just let Coach Angel into the chat room, so now he's going to cause all kinds of problems. But you know,
maybe
Mm-hmm.
stop the share and then close this game. Open another one from Coach Logan.
I said maybe.
That's the white jersey.
So this one is another game with Jude. Let's share screen here. So this is Jude against Alex. So this one went d4, knight f6, bishop f4. Okay, so this started as a London system. b6, I think, is an inaccurate move order because it will allow white to play the move bishop b5, which I don't think you really want to allow, because here, essentially, when you make the move b6, why do we make the move b6? It's very obvious what black is hoping to do with this move. It's not necessarily bad, but what is he trying to do? What is black's goal with the move b6? It's pretty simple, but okay. Black wants to put the bishop on b7. This should be pretty obvious, yeah. So the problem, well, b6 in and of itself is not a bad idea. I think that he should wait on this until he's castled, because at this point here, white's going to go bishop b5. And now black cannot play bishop b7 because they will face a disaster after something like this. There's the knight on c6 will be lost and this game is already finished. So this is not the end of the world because black can play bishop d7. But then let's say white were to retreat the bishop back to d3. And we have this situation where we've provoked black's bishop to d7, which is clearly a square they did not want to go to, both because b6 made the b7 square available, which was stronger, but also now this bishop can't come to d6 because the bishop on d7 is in the way of the queen defending it. So my recommendation here would be to play bishop d6 instead. And for example, after bishop g3, castles, bishop d3, now and only now you can play the move b6. And here you don't have to worry about bishop b5 anymore because there's no real problem with being unable to castle. So I believe that white could have played bishop b5 here to punish black for that. But okay, so the game goes like this: knight e5, castles, bishop g3. And now bishop takes e5 I really dislike. I don't think we want to give up the bishop pair like that. And black needs to do something else. So it's a tough situation because I think black has played not a great move order, but I still think it's probably okay. My instinct for black here would be the move queen c7 to pressure this knight. Now, I think if white allows this knight to be exchanged, black is absolutely fine. So I would expect white to play f4 and try to set the attack in motion. And here black has a very important maneuver. And if you don't know this maneuver with black at this point, you can lose very, very quickly. But it's a very nice maneuver to know. Whenever your opponent has set up a stonewall structure like this and is trying to attack your king, there's two main things you can try to do to stop the attack. One of those things is to try to trade off white squared bishops. That's not going to happen here. You've got your bishop locked inside the pawn chain with e6, and you can't play bishop a6. But the other thing that you can try to do is you really need to shut this bishop down. The best way to do that is to go knight e4. Sorry, not knight e3. So what I like is the move knight e7. And with this move, I'm planning the move knight e4, which will shut down white's bishop and make his attack much harder to achieve. So for example, if white were to play queen f3, which feels very natural to prevent knight e4, then after knight f5, and now a strong move bishop e7. I don't see how white's going to stop a knight from getting to e4. And once a knight comes to e4, white's attack is going to be much harder to carry out. So this is an important maneuver to know, that you want to play knight e7 and knight e4 to shut down the bishop on d3. Because after bishop e5 and d e5, now I think black is in a lot of trouble. This attack is going to be very, very powerful because of white's unopposed white squared bishop and his extra space. And d4, I mean, it feels a little desperate, but it's also understandable. So white took it, which I don't love because that lets this knight come to c5. I would think something like knight e4 is absolutely finished. I don't see how black can ever hope to defend against an attack like this, because if he takes this, there is knight d6. And once that happens, I think this game is basically done. The e3 pawn doesn't matter. White can take it back whenever he wants it. But yeah, e4 I don't like so much because now knight c5 will come. And here indeed black did go ahead and play knight c5. So knight f3. And now h6. I don't like that move. Just wondering what we can do instead. maybe it's not so bad, but I was thinking maybe we can take this one and go knight b4 and sacrifice a pawn like this, because after, say, queen d8 and rook d8, it's not so easy for white to coordinate, and I think black should be okay here with the extra activity. For example, after rook c1 and, say, knight d3, and I think black's pieces are active enough that he should be fine. In any case, though, h6 was played, bishop h4, queen d7, and now after a3, it's a much tougher scenario for black because he can't challenge this bishop on d3 as easily, and once something like b4 comes, the pawn on d4 could be a big weakness. And here it looks like black blundered with knight a5, but let's see if anybody can find a better move for black here. What should he do? Knight a5 was the right idea, I think, but the wrong time for it. He needed to do something else first.
Maybe a5.
So Coach Alex says a5. Why does Coach Alex want to play a5? And what is the next move after a5?
A5, A4.
Yes.
Or maybe
Black should play a5. So first things first, this stops white from playing b4 and challenging the c5 knight. But second, if black is allowed to play a4 next, then he will stop b4 forever, and he will also artificially isolate the c4 pawn. So for example, if white were to, I don't know, make some stupid move like king h1, now after a4, black is ready to go like bishop a6, knight a5, rook c8. He'll be able to put a huge amount of pressure against the c4 pawn, which white will have a hard time defending. So at this point, I believe in order to prevent that, white should play b3. But still, I think it's very clear that including the moves a5 and b3 should be heavily in black's favor, because now it's much harder for white to play b4 and gain space and kick the knight away. Instead, after knight a5, now things are going very wrong. After b4, I mean, black has to take this and bring the knight back to c6, but this is a bad sign. And after something like rook d1, bishop f2 will follow. White will take the pawn on d4 for sure, and black is going to have to suffer with the pawn down, but he still has some drawing chances because of the opposite colored bishops. But this is not going to be much fun. Instead, though, after knight a b3 and bc5, this should be easily winning for white, because at this point, his two pieces are much better than black's rook. And now, I guess this was, yeah, I mean, here the two pieces will run circles around the rook. Like this knight's about to show up on d6, where it will clog the d file, block the c file, control the c8 square, hit this bishop, and yeah. So here, white played knight f3, which I don't like. I would have much preferred the move bishop.
I have a question, Sam.
Yes.
Can black have played G5 in that position?
Which position?
Right here. Back. Yeah.
Right now?
The idea is to play rook d8.
Yeah, I see the idea. It's actually.
Oh, but he could go bishop f2. Bishop f2, I think, just.
Maybe, but bishop f2, I'm losing stuff. My instinct would be to take this one, actually. I think that I'm going to have way too many.
Oh, whoa. No, even push pawn is more dangerous in that position. Go back. Push
Which
pawn.
position here?
Right here. Pawn takes pawn. No, rook e8. Pawn takes pawn. If you take the knight, push pawn is game over.
Oh, yeah, that's even stronger. Right, you are.
Wow.
Yeah, so, but, yeah, so h7 check would actually promote the pawn on the spot. But even if that didn't work, what I had seen was this bishop h7, which also is good enough, because now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
At this point here, like white is up a lot of pawns, and also black's king is not particularly safe. Sooner or later, he's going to have to take this pawn, and when I go rook g4 and bishop f6, and I have all my pawns protected, I'm a clean pawn up, black's king is cut off. I think this should win routinely, but yes, h7 would be even faster. So yeah, here,
Thank you.
I don't love knight f3. I would have much preferred the move bishop f1 when this knight is ready to come to d6 next, which I think should bring the game to its conclusion very, very quickly. Knight f3 it's not so bad though. So white went for bishop f1 next. And here, okay, I mean, black is offering a little bit of resistance, but there's not that much to be done. Check and no. I don't think there's much to do here. Check and then check again. And wait, so black declined to draw here? I don't know how you can decline a draw in a position like this one. Yeah. White, of course, shouldn't allow a draw. He can play like bishop d3 or something, and white is absolutely winning. But it would have been much better for white to. But here, black could have made a draw, but instead played rook c3, which I don't understand. And now after knight d4, black is absolutely lost again. This knight is coming, and it seems like here black blundered his rook. But even if he had seen that threat, I think there's absolutely nothing to be done. Like white's about to go bishop d8 and take this pawn. So, and there's not anything black can do about it.
The black bishop on a6 can capture the knight on the next move on b5.
Yeah, black can take this, but the problem is here, white has two very good bishops for a not very impressive rook. It's extremely difficult to deal with this threat of bishop d8 to go take that pawn on b6. In fact, I don't see how you're going to stop it almost at all. And this is basically winning for white. I don't see how, like he's up a lot of material already and his position is completely winning. So,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so good game to Jude and Alex. Let's go and see if we can fit in a couple more. So I'm going to stop the share and close this one.
Hey, Nash.
So now we have Chloe against Nathan. Let me share my screen.
I like the plaques behind you. You got the chest life up on.
Oh yeah,
framed up. I like that.
I got a shrine to myself. I mean,
hey, ain't nothing wrong with that, brother.
My ego is not big enough. I need it to get bigger. Okay, so this was Chloe against Nathan. And here black played the move bishop f5, which was a mistake because now c takes d5 is very powerful, which Chloe does indeed play. And queen b3, and black's position is already very difficult because it's an exchange Slav where black has prematurely brought this bishop out, and now queen b3 is a very painful move to face.
Oh.
Because
If queen d5, then knight can take on d5.
yes, that's a good point. If black were taking with the queen, that's not a very good idea. Knight takes is a problem. So there follows cd, queen b3, queen b6, and now looks like Chloe has found a good move with knight takes d5. And at this point, as far as I can tell, white is going to be a clean pawn up. This was actually contested just a few days ago in this Dingler and Vachier-Lagrave match with it went take here, and it was like
B3 again.
queen b3. I'm trying to remember how this game went. It was a pretty silly game. I don't know. Somehow white ended up playing king e2 and black ended up playing king d8 in like the next 3 moves, which was very strange. But yeah, okay, I don't remember. But yeah, the way black played here with queen takes b3, now after knight takes f6, e takes f6, and a takes b3, here white now is a pawn up with a very pleasant endgame, probably more or less winning. And at this point, Nathan played bishop to c2, which is attempting to get the pawn back. And here I think white should have exchanged one advantage for another. I think white should have given up the extra pawn to get a big lead in development, which would have
What's going on with Sam?
Is it just me or is he frozen?
He's frozen.
Yeah, give Sam a moment. It looks like he might have lost connection, guys.
Maybe he's just thinking of a very good move. And he's thinking,
Oh,
Oh, okay.
just wait a couple of more minutes, guys. It must be his connection.
okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
looks
even
like he might have
realize-
lost connection, guys, but
I didn't even realize Figgy was here.
sorry,
Who's
guys.
Figgy? Wait. Who just said that?
that was Dylan. Dylan just called you Figgy.
Dylan.
Sorry, guys. It looks like my internet just went down for a second, but I've got it back. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, in this position, instead of knight d2, I think white should have played e3, and after bishop b3, bishop b5 check. Black has a very bad position. White had to give up the extra pawn, but black has lost a lot of time to take it. And it's very hard to see how black's going to hold everything together. For example, let's say knight c6 and...
We can't see the board.
Oh, okay. That I should share screen again. Something went wrong there. Hopefully you guys can see it now.
Yes, now we can.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, my internet just was overloaded for a moment. But yeah, so here, this is already, I think, it's very unpleasant for black. But the way white played with knight d2, I don't love, because now after bishop b4, white was trying too hard to hang on to the material when now this knight is pinned and the bishop can't get out, which is not as nice. But here still, I think despite that, while white could have played better, it still is a very good position. White has a nice advantage. So after bishop takes d2 and bishop takes d2, white has a very healthy bishop pair and a better central control and a lead in development. So I think black's position is really skeptical at this point. And already now I would be looking for direct wins with white. Let's see what with. So Chloe played rook hc1, which looks like a totally natural move, but I'm wondering if I can be even more violent, because after e4, I'm not sure I see how black is planning on saving his bishop. In fact, he might just lose a piece on the spot. I don't see how we're going to stop d5, and this bishop is going to get trapped. Unless somebody can find a way out. I don't know. Let's see. Nash, even with the San Francisco background, we can still tell that you're lying on the couch. Nah, I like it. But yeah, so
Hey.
it's all good. Nothing wrong with that. We're stuck inside all day.
I was about to say a6, but I just realized taking is not even a threat.
Yeah, so after a6, we can go d5 anyway.
d5, yeah.
I believe black is losing a piece here after e4. I certainly don't see how to save it. So I think this would have immediately won the game.
What?
Rook hc1, as Chloe played, this is one of those cases where, like, this is a very good move, and it gets another piece out, and it's very simple and all that, but you don't want to miss a chance to knock your opponent out. And I believe that e4, well, after rook hc1, I believe white is much, much better. I think after e4, black would have basically had to resign immediately. So here king e7 is played, but this is such a disaster for black. Rook c7 on the way. Rook b8, this is not a good sign, and now d5. Okay, so now Chloe plays e4, and that at this point it looks more or less finished. Black has to try a6. I can't imagine any other move. Yeah. Bishop a4 and b5, but here, like, white is strategically so dominant. So takes, bishop d3. Knight b8, that's a real happy move. But I think black had to do it. And then at the end of all this, yeah, I think black was extremely lucky to escape with just one pawn down. But I also think that even this position is completely lost. Like, white is a very clean pawn up and has a big center and a more active king. I mean, so yes, Angel, this was an excellent game by Chloe. And it seems like she won very routinely. Set this passed pawn in motion sooner, and then nice active king. Yeah, so it seems like Chloe won a model game, and yeah, go send these guys. Oh, did we blunder this? Come on, be careful. Here, g3. Let's just go g3 here for white. No tricks, no nothing. Black can resign.
If it was g3, well, that's a pretty bad.
Oh,
move.
don't be afraid to unmute and step in and talk about your game.
Yeah, so here I think that g3 would have immediately forced resignation. Here instead, at this point, black got to play this trick, but luckily for white, white queens first, and as a result, black is losing everything. So here, this I think would have been a pretty nice finish to the game. Instead, white missed that, but is taking all of the pawns, and now g4 is mate in one, but white was extremely mean and instead took black's queen. So yeah, okay, so good game. And made a rook. Oh, if you made a queen, it would have been stalemate. What a troll. If this game was played online and you chose to if you played this game online, you had the automatic queen setting on.
Well, if you're pre-moving, you would have got hurt.
Yeah, so this reminds me, I played this little match thing on Chess 24 with the English commentators against the Spanish commentators, and I found this beautiful checkmate. It wasn't my game, but Pascal Charbonneau was playing the game, and there was this beautiful checkmate, and the final move of the checkmate was f1 equals knight, but he had automatic promote to a queen on, and he only had a few seconds, and he had to quick turn off auto queen and turn it into a knight, and I may have used the
There's
backboard at some point in the
there's
match.
actually a key you can press. I forgot what key it is, but you can press a key when you want to under promote.
I don't know, but Pascal won the game, so with like 1 second left, it was a very funny moment. In any case, I'm going to stop the share here and look for the next game. So great game from Chloe.
What?
And it looks like the next one that Coach Logan has sent me is also a game from Chloe, so we'll see what other damage she can do. So share screen. Okay, so this one started off as a semi-Slav, so that's d4, d5, c4, c6, knight f3. I just released an online course about the semi-Slav on Chessable, so we'll see who did this right. Yeah, so here, basically, when you play both e6 and c6, you're hindering the development of both your bishop and your knight. And the question is, what do you get for it? And the answer to that is that you're now threatening to take on c4 with black. So white has a lot of moves here, but bishop g5 is the most ambitious one. Like, for example, e3 would be the move that I would generally play, that I've played a lot in the past. But well, e3 stops any hope of d takes c4. At the same time, white has had to block in his own bishop in order to play this. And as a result, black gets decent counterplay. By playing bishop g5, white is telling black, I'm going to call your bluff. I'm going to complete my development as normally and strongly as possible with e3 next, get my bishop outside the pawn chain, get a nice big center, leave you with the bad bishop and the bad knight stuck behind your own pawns. And I don't believe you can get away with taking my pawn. I think if black plays a normal quiet move here, like bishop e7, black will be worse. And black instead has to be very direct and take on c4 either here or on the next move. Or you can play knight bd7, which is the move I recommended in my Cambridge Springs course, or what I was doing for Chessable. And the point is that after e3, again, if you make some nothing move like bishop e7, I think white will be better. But here, this move queen a5 is actually pretty annoying because it becomes hard to deal with threats of knight e4 when black is threatening a lot of things, and I think he's okay. In any case, though, bishop e7 I think is complacent, and after e3, here white looks better to me. You don't necessarily need to play bishop d3 so fast. My instinct would be to first play like queen c2 or rook d1 as waiting moves, but there's certainly nothing wrong with bishop d3. So dc, b5, bishop back to d3, this all makes sense. Okay, so in this position, the whole fight is whether black can get the move c5 in. If black is ever able to play c5 to challenge white's extra space in the center, as well as wake up the sleeping bishop on b7, black will be fine. But it will take a lot of effort for black to get c5 through, and it will not be easy to do. My instinct here actually would be to take this knight. And I want to do this right now before black can bring his knight to d7 and take back with the knight. And here, after bishop takes f6 and knight e4, and white's ready for rook c1, I think that white is going to win the fight for the c5 square, and that black will be unable to get it through. And if black doesn't get c5, he will be left with a backward c6 pawn and a bad bishop on b7. So instead, though, white castled. Here, rook c1, these are all still good moves. It's still going to be very hard for black to play c5 because b5 is hanging. Okay, but a6 came. And at this point, you might say, all right, black is ready for c5 next move. And I believe that Chloe played a very good move here. What should white play here? I guess everybody sees it in the text, but... what should white do? All right, well, people can just copy it. But yeah, so Chloe played knight e4, which is very strong because this stops black from playing c5. So black tried taking on e4, bishop e7, and then went for a desperado with knight takes f2, which didn't work very well. But even if black had taken back, here the problem that black is facing is that this pawn is now pinned. So first of all, white's threatening to take it, so black must play rook c8. But the problem becomes, how are we actually going to break the pin to this pawn? It's not easy to do, because as soon as you challenge my bishop, with a move like knight f6, c5 becomes harder to accomplish. And here, I think white has a very good move. We only have a few minutes left. Let's see if anybody can find the best move for white and cause black a huge amount of pain. So Evan is suggesting b4, but I think black can get away with taking it.
What about rook c5?
That hangs it in one move to the knight.
Oh, I'm going crazy. Wow.
It's an important idea. It doesn't work here, but it's important to see.
Yeah, I was trying to lock in the bishop. I thought we had two attackers.
I think the best move, realistically, I think the best move in this position will be knight e1.
Why knight e1?
Because you can reroute, you can maneuver the knight to d3 and just take advantage of the c5 weakness.
That's a thought, but I believe it's slightly inaccurate, and I think there's a somewhat better move. So Coach Alex has suggested knight e1. Now, this move actually, he has suggested this because he wants to play knight d3 to stop black from ever getting c5 through. It also does another very nice thing, which it gives this bishop on e4 a retreat square on f3 so that it's not so easy for black to kick away. But the problem with this move, at least from what I can see, is that black can go f5 and then e5. And this looks pretty annoying to me because now I'm not going to be able to play knight d3 because of e4. And here, if black is able to play e4 next and then c5, I think black should be okay. And I don't see a great way to stop that from happening. So this, well, I think Coach Alex is on the right track. I believe the best move is knight d2, which will make this same plan much harder to pull off. In addition, there's a nice added benefit that this bishop is protected. So for example, if black were to play knight f6, you don't have to retreat the bishop. You can play Coach Angel's move with rook c5 now that it doesn't hang the rook. And this should be very bad for black. And the knight on d2 turns out to be very useful because we can recapture this bishop. And here black could try f5 in the same way as before, but the problem for him is that after bishop f3 and e5, he's no longer necessarily threatening anything I particularly care about with e4. And I think white is better here in a way that he wasn't in the previous position. But yeah, so it looks like Chloe is a very good player and has won 2 very good games here. Maybe the rest was full of mistakes, but the last thing I will show before we call it quits for the day is that black tried the desperado knight takes f2, hoping that white would take back with rook takes f2, queen e7 with an extra pawn. But white very expertly had a counter desperado with bishop takes h7 check, pointing out that if black were to take this, what does white do to win the game here?
Probably the best possible move for white is f2 to capture the knight.
No, but then you will lose your bishop. We have a much better move here. Actually, we have 2 much better moves.
Queen c2, check.
Okay, so Jonathan,
E5.
you don't look like a Jonathan, but okay, queen c2 check was is the best move. And the point is that this gets the queen off of this hanging square, so the knight is no longer able to take it. And then when black resolves this check was somewhere or another, let's say king g8, now white can get away with taking the queen because her own queen is not hanging on d1. So black instead played king h8, but after now rook takes f2 and queen e7, bishop e4, black's position is very bad because this bishop is bad. The pawn and break c5 will be very hard to pull off. And on top of all that, the king is now potentially a weakness as well. So for instance, after rook c8, knight e5, it seems like black had to play knight f6 because if knight e5, there's going to be checkmate with queen h5. And given that black has to play knight f6, white now took on c6, which I don't even think is the best move. I would have probably done something more violent, but or took on c6. But yeah, even that is a clean pawn up. My instinct would have been to try to like take on f6 in some way. But in any case, yeah, so these were good games this week. So congratulations to the winners. Thanks very much for joining me. Hopefully it was a little easier on this Zoom call than it was on YouTube Live, where I had to wait for 30 seconds before people would respond to what I said. But
Nathan, Coach Nathan.
And then the pick me.
All right. So anything else, gentlemen, or should we call it a day?
Appreciate you, brother, man.
All right. So yeah, have a
Thank
good day,
you.
guys, and I really look forward to talking to everybody next week.
Sam,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Coach Nathan.
Somebody talking to me?
are you doing this every week?
For the foreseeable future, I think at least 4 more weeks. I mean, once this virus goes away and I'm free to travel again and start playing tournaments, I don't know, but and hopefully then you guys will be somewhat busy with your own activities too. But for the foreseeable future, I'll be around. So if you absolute hate looking at me, just mark Wednesdays on your calendar as the day you have to pretend to be sick, so that you don't have to put up with me.
Oh man,
Thank you.
oh man.
All right. Have a good one, guys. I will talk to you next week.
All right.
Yeah. Bye,
See you soon.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Challenge you tomorrow, Nathan. Whatever
Sounds
you want.
good, buddy.
At 11, at 12.
Oh, it's going down, Dylan?
Goodbye.
We gonna play, buddy?
Mm.
All right, Dylan. I'll see you tomorrow, buddy.